You have made it to the final module of the Clarity series. We are about done with getting clarity for now. However, this is the final step for you. I keep saying it, but it's true, to take a deep breath and step back and take a look at things, okay? There's a passage in scripture that I put in the written text side of things. But a summary of it is Jesus is essentially saying, if you set off up a mountain without first researching, buying, and packing the proper lunch, you're an idiot, right? And so that's why I called this section Count the Cost. This is the final section to ask yourself a few questions just to analyze, am I ready to go on this thing or am I not? This is a section that is going to help to put at ease a little bit the learners out there that are scared to take action, and is going to help to give the people who take too much action just a little bit of a longer step before they go. Now, if you're a learner, this will not put you fully at ease, okay? Because you're never fully ready. You have to go. So after this, when you take action, you might not feel ready. You might be like, that's it? I need to go in deep dive to get clarity before I go. No, you don't. You need to go. But for those of you who are action-oriented, it was important that we got clarity, and this is the final step before you go. So hang with me a little bit longer. Here we go. Count the cost. What I want us to do in this section is to ask us a few questions quickly. First question I want you to ask yourself is, do I have the resources to do this thing? Within my plan of what I am, what I'm not, my why, my vision for this dream to become reality, only you can know, and you don't know for sure, but at least have an idea of what that's going to take from you resource-wise. Do I have the materials? Do I have the money? Do I have the knowledge, or whatever that means, right? To be able to go. And little hint for you, it's usually not as much as you're thinking to be able to start, and it's usually going to take way more than you could ever have imagined to get there, okay? So just so you know, a lot of times the barrier to entry is a lot lower than people imagine, and the price to get to the top of the mountain is way more than people could fathom. Next question I want you to ask yourself is, do I have the necessary skills? And if you don't, where could you get those skills? For some of you guys, starting right now is what matters. For some of you guys, finding someone with the skills and learning from them for a season first is going to take you way further, way faster, okay? Or even just giving yourself a YouTube crash course. I love to say, it's kind of a joke with one of my buddies. If I don't know it, I'll be like, well, I'm giving myself a YouTube crash course on this today because I have no idea. And by the end of the day, I will be a intermediate expert. So anyways, that's another thing to ask. Is there anything else that I need to consider? Anything that needs to be taken into consideration that you haven't yet? This is a great spot because there's always certain things that are unique to you that no one else like me could teach, or no one else like me could bring up. So this is a great step for you to just step back for a second and just think. Is there anything I'm not thinking about here? And there might be some little things like, give examples. If you're under 16 and can't drive, how are you going to get to the job site? You might think you're disqualified. You're not. I have watched multiple people under the age of 16 execute reasonably good service-based businesses by finding a way to deliver the goods, whether that be hiring someone who is over 16 to bring you there and work with you on it, or hiring someone to simply bring you there, or doing it out of your home so that people come to you. I've seen at least 4 people under the age of 16 do it, and do it well. They're not maybe competing with the people who are older, but if you start now, by the time you are older, you'll have the ability to drive and experience, and so it compounds, but it's just something to take into consideration is my main point. That is really important. And that brings me to the last part of Count the Cost, okay? The last thing I want you to think about is the flip side. So we just talked about the resources you're gonna need, the skills you're gonna need, those sort of things. I want you to take a quick second before you go and think about the resources you're not willing to allocate, the lengths you're not willing to go to, the things that you aren't willing to sacrifice in your life for this to work. The reason why I saved this for the end is you had to figure out your why first. What are the things that your why is not strong enough for, that you're not willing to sacrifice for this? 1, it's going to help you determine how strong your why is. And 2, it's going to help you differentiate between your life and your work. The people who have no work-life balance, as people call it, it's simply that they're willing to sacrifice anything and everything for their work. I want you to think about what type of work-life balance or what type of differentiation you want to have in your life. And you have to know two things. One, if you want there to be a separation between your work and who you are can include your work, but it isn't just your work. There's still a separation. You are going to have to set boundaries. However, the people who don't set those boundaries will beat you in business because what you're not willing to sacrifice, they are. For instance, I set a boundary, I'm not going to work on weekends. And I had my reasons. The people who were willing to work on weekends beat me. They got more jobs than me, which means more profit to spend and all these things. However, that's simply within business. To me, I was still beating them. Why? Because I'm young and I'm already married and able to run a household. Why? Well, I need to take the time on Saturday to clean the house, to organize things, to do these things with my wife, right? Okay. That is why this is so important, is because no one can tell you what the right balance there looks like. And so I want you to take a second and think about, what am I not willing to sacrifice for this company going into it? What will not be a part of me that is subjected to, or a part of my lifestyle that is subjected to the business and the business's everyday needs? The smaller that list is, the smaller the gap is, the more you will be able to compete in the marketplace, but the less there will be anything outside of that to speak of. The more long that list is, the more of a gap there will be, and you will have to understand that the price is your ability to compete in the marketplace. At least at face value, that is the price of having these boundaries. But you will have the ability to build a bigger life and a more rich life outside of work. Does that make sense? I don't believe that either is right or wrong, and I don't even believe there is a one or the other. I think it's a continuum, and you just have to figure out where on that continuum you fall to build your dream lifestyle. This is another reason why this course is not for people who are looking short term, because the short term might go all in for a few months. We're talking about how to build a lifestyle here, and this is absolutely critical, absolutely critical. Are you willing to give up relationships? Well, then you can't be upset if you're alone for a season. Are you willing to give up any spare time? Then you can't be upset if you're exhausted. Those sort of things, right? At the same time, if you want relationships and if you want to take time off, then you can't be upset if the person who's lonely and exhausted gets more jobs than you. It's just how life works. This all comes down to you're the manager of a resource called your time. How are you going to steward that and allocate that, and knowing ahead of time what that's going to mean? Here's a couple examples. What am I not willing to sacrifice for this company? These are all the things that you will not sacrifice in order to have success in the company. Maximum and minimum, or floor and ceiling as some people call it in different areas. This is important to establish. So this one takes a little bit of explaining what I mean. Taking certain areas and maybe rather than saying I'm not willing to sacrifice time, well, you can't exactly say that. You have to sacrifice time. So there's certain areas where you say I'm not willing to sacrifice this. But then there's certain areas where what you actually need to do is set a floor and a ceiling for your sacrifice level, or a maximum or a minimum and a maximum, okay? Here's what this means. My floor time commitment is 20 hours a week to this endeavor, and my ceiling time commitment is 80 hours a week to this endeavor, etc., right? Which, by the way, just so you know, as a side thought, if you don't put a ceiling and a floor on your time, you just need to know it will take as much as it can. It's funny because I've told my wife, when I talk to people who are coming out of college and they talk about how they'll work like a 50 or 60 hour work week or whatever. They're like, over 40 hour work week, I had to work overtime this week, I'm exhausted. To me, it's laughable because by the time I was 18, I had already worked like over an 80-hour work week because I had not put limitations on it, and therefore it takes all of your time. And now, to some people that might be laughable. They might be like, I've done over 100 hours, whatever. The point isn't in the numbers. The point is it will take every little bit that you give it. And so you having a minimum and a maximum is very important. And areas that you hate, that's where you have the minimum because you'll not want to do it. And so at least then you hit that minimum, okay? So this is why it's helpful. It's why it's important. In reality, as cool as it might be for me to flex about like, by 18, I'd already done over an 80-hour work week, that's not helpful. Really, all I'm saying is I misallocated my resource of time because did it need that many hours that week? No. It was just that I was project to project to project to project, doing way more than I should have in work because I hadn't set a boundary there. And therefore, by the end of the week, I'm exhausted and I've done all this crap and I've been up late and I've been up early and I've been working long days. And it's just not a good place to be. There's no point for that. If I had said my maximum ceiling is 65 hours a week, my minimum is 40 hours a week or whatever, I would have hit the 65-hour cap. I would have drawn a boundary. I would have spent personal time. The next week, I would have dove back into all of the projects I had going. It would have been fine, and it would have been better than fine because I would have worked better, okay? So what am I not willing to sacrifice? Minimum and maximum, also known as a floor and a ceiling. And last thing I might add to this is a simple why for both of those. There might be a few other ways to phrase this question, but it's all just different phrasings of roughly the same question. Just probe this for a little bit and try and use, give a why, just like how we're giving a why for your business. Give a why for why not. That way this is my why for business and this is my why for when business is not my focus. And those should both be strong. Or if you want business to be your everything, then you don't need this why. It should be, what am I not willing to sacrifice? Nothing, minimum and maximum, anything I want. Why? Because my why in business is so strong that my business can become my life. And if that's the case, great, but at least now you know. Okay, well, that's a wrap. Hopefully this course has quickly brought you through a few main frameworks from understanding your what, which is your main customer, your main service, short-term versus long-term, where you're oriented in that way, diving into what you are, what you're not, building out a solid why, and then finally taking a second to take a deep breath and count the cost before you move. To those of you who are learners, it might not feel like we covered much, but I'm telling you, this is all you need to start. People overestimate how much needs to be done as a barrier to entry. For those of you who are action takers, thank you so much for taking the time to go through this. Now it is time to go take action. I want you to count the cost, take a look at it. If you're ready to go, let's go. If you're not, get ready to go because we are going to see you in the courses. The best next course for you probably is 1 month to profit. When I was trying to get profitable, it took me months and it took me a lot of money wasted because I just didn't know how to go from 0 to 1. That course is gonna make sure you do that within a month and get you going very quickly, very effectively, point you in the right direction, and we'll be out of here. So go over to that course, get started. That's where you're gonna start taking a ton of action and a lot more practical things that lead directly to money.